All right, welcome everyone. Today we're going to be doing a quick video on Alone Australia, specifically a Gina chick. So spoiler alert, I'll give you a sec to pause it if you want. Okay, so Gina won Alone Australia. Now, that's been over the headlines, I'm sure you've seen it already, but that's one of the reasons why we're going to pay attention to her in this quick video. And another reason is that her strategy, if you can call it that, strategy is too hard a word, but her way of being in the world, something, as you know, I'm quite interested in, her way of being is quite interesting. And the way that she approached this situation is quite novel from our point of view in terms of our society these days and the way that we view challenges, but nonetheless was ultimately successful. So I'm just going to play a quick video for you. This is from episode 1, Alone Australia. Thank you, SBS On Demand, much appreciated. And we're just going to go through some clips that I think really highlight her style and her way. And I'll give you some discussion on my thoughts on it. Now, this is a relatively new area for me as well, so you're right at the forefront of what I'm learning, and let's go. I like this guy as well. I'm going to show you this little bit because he relates a bit to it.
Into the bush where I've been dropped off by the boat, and I can hear something moving around up here.
So a little bit earlier on in the clip, he actually did a welcome to country, which is a little bit of an example of the sort of mindset that I'm talking about here. And while we're looking at this, you can sum it up as not a confrontational, but a synergistic mindset.
That, you know, Palawa and Pakana people have survived here for millennia.
Very First Nations approach.
Oh, my mouth's so dry.
Here it is here.
So before I do anything here, because I'm new to this place and I've never been here before, it's important that I
Excuse any background noise.
In my language, real Māori, and this is true with those Aboriginal culture and Māori culture, you know, Protocol 101 for any First Nations person really around the world.
Mm.
The wind just dropped right then when I said
that. The sun coming through is beautiful.
We've done quite well with the videography on this.
Kirona,
Kiraro, Kiroto, Kiwaho, Rere ho, Paimarere. E mihi ana ho, Kina mana whenua o la truita. Ko Taranaki te Mauna, ko Ngāti Maru te Iwi, no Aotearoa ahau, ko Rob Tuko Inua. E mihi ana ahau, Kina Tupuna, Kina tana te whenua, kia koutou. Kia ora tātou katoa.
Just beautiful. I really like the way that when they've done the editing, they've actually provided space and time for this. It would have been easy for them to just dismiss it. You know, no animals got killed, no scary things got eaten. But yeah, they've really paid attention to it. So kudos to SBS for doing that. Just something else I noticed, the above and below, inside and out, actually a bit reminiscent of the Hermetic tradition. So a topic of interest for a lot of people is how all these different forms of religion and spirituality and esotericism all combine to provide standard concepts that are common throughout. I will explore some more of that on this channel. But yeah, I just really like that. And if I might point out here, that's a perfect example. He's coming in with an attitude of, I'm here, I respect you, and we don't even need to question whether or not the trees are actually sentient. Now, I would say that he would probably believe that they are, but we don't even need to worry about that, because what we're looking at here is the frame, the state of mind that he is in, regardless of whether it's the truth or not, of course. Like, that is putting him in, and how that results in the best way that he can be in right relationship with the universe. And one of the reasons I like Alone Australia, well, all the Alone series, is that you really see when people are in the right mindset. You know, people in virtually the same situations, and yet the way that they approach it is vastly different. The way they overcome their own specific challenges is vastly different. And so I threw Rob's beautiful little welcome to country, or apology, I don't know the proper term for it, in the start there, because I thought it was quite amazing. Deep breath, calm, motion, connection. He's being present. He's not letting the projections of his mind overcome his ability to analyse the situation.
Hello, lake. Hello, trees. This is home.
Okay, so as you can imagine, there's a lot for me to unpick just in these little vignettes. So I'm just going to pause it right there for starters. First of all, let's quickly talk practicalities. Possum skin coat, brilliant idea. There is no synthetic material that is going to beat the material that has evolved to be in that environment. Yeah, so the possum skin coat, great idea. I did find out a little bit later on that she actually didn't take a sleeping bag with her. I believe she was actually just sleeping in that. So not only was it super practical, it gave her another item that she could use in her tent. But the other thing is, 2 points there. Already, we're only about 10 seconds in and I've got more than a couple of minutes worth to talk about. She talked about the concept of home. Now, isn't that amazing? Isn't that just so brilliant that in her mind, and again, I'm sure she genuinely believes this, and one thing that's a common thread through a lot of the videos that I do is that believing in an objective truth is a consequence of Enlightenment era thinking. And the Enlightenment's given us a lot, so don't get up me about that. But we actually don't need to answer that question. We can actually put that aside. And it's something that we're so keen on these days is what is the truth? What is the reality? So I heard someone talking about the placebo effect. We were talking about homeopathic remedies, it was. And they said, oh, no, it's all bullshit. It's just the placebo effect. And I said, well, it works. That should be the only question that matters. It's a very empirical approach. I don't need to know how it works. Just does it work? And if the answer is yes, the lived experience of that person has been improved, then who cares by what mechanism? If that tablet the only thing it does is allow you to activate processes in your own body for repair and for longevity and for well-being, success. Anyway, we digress. So she's calling it home. And I think in my mind, and I apologise because this is very new for me as well, but in her mind, this is already putting her in a state of calm, a state of ease. When you're stressed and you're worried and you're under a lot of pressure, your mind tends to close and focus, and you lose that bigger picture, that gestalt that they call it in the cognitive science literature, and you start focusing on narrow things. And the problem is that if you're not fully in tune with your environment, what you're focusing on is not a manifestation of the best thing in that environment to focus on. What you're focusing on is a combination of your past fears, your projections, your wishes onto the world. So already she's calling it home. That's setting her up to be there for the long term. I think this is a really beautiful way that she's doing it. And again, I don't believe this is actually a strategy that she's putting on for the Alone series. I believe this is actually just how she is in the world. You look at the work that she does through Wild Heart. I'll link to her websites in the description. I believe this is actually her, which is what makes it all the more amazing. But nonetheless, these are all strategies that we can take into our own situations. And why this is relevant on a leadership channel is, well, one, there's an aspect of self-leadership. There are multiple different aspects of your psyche, and they're all competing for different things. Whatever method you want to use, Jordan Peterson talks about the monster and the man, taming the monster. And then there's a different approach, a John Vervaeke approach that he mentions, the monster, the lion, and the man. There's all these different aspects of the psyche. There's the Jungian approach where different complexes are all engaging in a synergistic, hopefully, way to move forward. And so there's a lot in here that we can really unpack, and I'll just keep going a little bit. And notice as well that she's talking hello trees, hello lake, as if they're actual beings. as if they have spirit. It's a very animistic approach. Now, animism doesn't come from the term animal, or it more comes from the term animate, as in everything has a spirit, everything is alive, as opposed to the Cartesian worldview that we take generally in Western society, which is everything is dead. Even trees we perceive as dead, even though we know conceptually that they're alive, right? We don't treat them as living beings generally. We're happy to cut them down with no remorse whatsoever. So nonetheless, she's taking a more of an animistic approach, and I believe that's really important, because what she's going to be able to do is she's going to be able to exercise her mind in a relationship with the world. So they call that the agent-arena relationship. She's the agent within this situation, and the campsite that she's been given, is the arena. And so she's already starting that reciprocal relationship by recognizing that they are entities of her own right. Because, again, regardless of whether or not they have their spirits and they animate and they're conscious and they can talk to you or relate with you on some energetic level, nonetheless, the perception in her mind is going to be that this is someone that I can have an open relationship with. And the way that I act influences the situation, the environment that I'm in, which is true, and the environment that she's in influences her. And by letting that process happen naturally and cyclically, she's going to be best placed to survive and thrive as well in this environment. We don't just want to survive, you don't just want to hang on for as long as you can. That's hardly a way to live in the world. You want to actually be able to thrive. So enough about that, let's get back to the clip.
It's dark, it's wild, it's brilliant. And I want to take it all in now, because in a week, and then in a month, and then in 3 months, all of these trees are going to be friends. This whole place, I'm going to know it as well as I know my own hand.
So really great there as well. She's talking about fear and darkness and excitement and all that. And then on the boat trip on the way in, she said there's a mix of excitement and fear, and they're so close together, I don't know which one is which is actually really insightful when you think about it. It sounds pithy, but it's actually really good, really close, and you can see how those two will be very closely related, particularly in a situation like this. Now, she's saying as well that they're going to be her friends, and that comes back to the agent-arena relationship that I was talking about. Once again, I do believe this is actually her, and this is actually what she believes, and I think it's placing her really well to be able to survive in this situation. The other thing I want to point out too is look at the time that she's taking. A lot of the other people on a show like this, they hop off the boat, they quick thing for the camera, and then they're off, and they're looking for shelter, and they're trying to get this, and they're trying to get that, apart from Rob, who I highlighted earlier. Whereas she's taken the time, and I think that's important here, because one of the aspects in a survival situation, one of the aspects in a lot of our lives, is that we actually have far more time available to us than we realise. We're so busy, caught up in various things that are happening. Even when we're not doing anything, there is an unconscious, just below the surface thought process that just keeps humming along and just keeps going and going. And it's not until you actually take the time to breathe, ritualize if you want, if that's your thing, and really absorb the environment, that you can actually break out of that. And you realize that there are 3,600 moments in every hour, right? And she's probably got a couple of hours till sunset. Now, she's got a bit that she needs to do. She knows that. But she's taken this time now to get herself into the right frame of mind. And again, you can't look at this from too analytical a perspective. I believe that she actually believes this, okay, which is fantastic. And who's to say that she's wrong either, right? And she's just expressing that. And I love as well that there's no trying to squash down the emotions. There's no, she's perfectly willing to admit the darkness, the excitement, and letting that move through rather than resisting it allows it to come and go rather than always being a background force in her experience. So we'll keep watching for a little bit longer.
So right now, I want to revel in the newness. Oh, this moss feels amazing. This isn't about
The texture, already, like, how can you get yourself most into this? You don't want your mind to conceptually know where you are. You want to have that embodied cognition of where you are. So the feet contain a lot of nerve endings. So she's really feeling the environment. And that's getting her conscious mind to just quiet down a little bit and really absorb where she is. Now, she's probably getting some grounding effects as well, negative ions swapping out with the earth and all that kind of stuff as well from a health perspective. But I really think that the best part is that she's embodying her relationship with the environment here. It's that embodied cognition I've spoken about in other videos, where she's not just using her brain or, let's call it the rational, enlightened mind, the ego mind, to perceive and to work with what she's perceiving. She's using her whole body, her whole experience. She's spoken about the neurons that are in your heart, the neurons that are in your gut. She's connecting with all of that. And a lot of these wisdom traditions, they have explanations or they have practices which seem like rubbish or gobbledygook to us, but and perhaps the rationale that they use to describe why the processes work don't actually describe a fundamental underlying reality. But what they do is they attune you to the environment for maximum success. And that is, I believe, what she's doing here right now.
About defeating nature or conquering the wilderness. If you go in with that kind of attitude, Mother Nature is going to slap you hard. The only way to truly be at home in the wild is to have humility and to realize that nature is going to break every single one of us open. For me, it's about my own personal journey, learning how to be more deeply at home in the wild and letting wild nature teach me how to be.
There we go, I've got that there. Letting nature teach me how to be. And something that John Vervaeke talks about as well in his work, which is there are two different modes. There's the having mode, which is I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I have to. And there's the being mode, which is how you show up with what frame. When I say frame, a frame is a way of organising information and working out what your response is. And her response here is one of humility. It's fantastic. Clearly the environment's going to be stronger than her. Also, one of play. You don't see she's just sort of dancing around a little bit, just absorbing it. She's open with her feelings. And this is really great stuff, and I believe there's a lot of really important leadership lessons here. You can imagine if she wasn't solo, but she actually had a team of people with her. Perhaps, they might think she's a little bit kooky for a bit, but who's going to be able to hold it together in themselves the best and then lead the team? If you can't lead yourself, you can't lead a team afterwards. And she's going to be in the best position to lead herself and consequently be in a position to lead the team. And what's interesting as well is that you can imagine if she was there with some people who weren't quite across what she was doing and why she was doing it, there might be some tension. But after a while, and David Hackworth talks about this in his books, Turning Teams Around in the Vietnam War. I forget the exact title of the book. I'll link to it. What he does is every time you say something like that, you provide a little subconscious commercial to everyone around you. And I guarantee after a couple of weeks, the people in her team in this scenario will be right on board with her attitude because they would see that she'd be going through and thriving, and that is the best way for her and for the team to move forward.
I really have to get to work because that sun is going to go down really fast. Okay, time to get to work.
Perfect. Well, we'll leave it there. And what I like about that, just a tiny bit at the end that I'll share, is that she's not off with the fairies. She's not in any way apart from the arena that she's in. So I spoke a bit earlier about the agent-arena relationship. She knows what is going to happen when it gets dark. She doesn't believe that nature is necessarily some beneficent force that's going to take care of her and cradle her. She knows that she has work to do. She knows there are practicalities, but she's able to exist in both those worlds at once. And as I've argued through this video, those worlds are actually coexist. The way that you turn up allows you to best act and be in the world in order to survive and thrive in a situation like this.